Hello and welcome to another edition of Lean Catalyst. I am your host, Damon Baker. I'm the CEO of Lean Focus, and this is a monthly webinar series that we do with distinguished leaders, and we'll introduce today's distinguished leader here in a moment. In this dynamic monthly one-hour interview series, we bring together like-minded CEOs and leaders who successfully embraced lean thinking to drive exceptional results within their organizations. It's through our captivating conversations that we're going to dive into their remarkable achievements, uncovering the strategies, insights, and practical wisdom that they've employed to propel their organizations forward. And each series features an in-depth interview with a distinguished CEO who's demonstrated extraordinary leadership in leveraging lean principles. And it's a great opportunity for them to share their experience with us and their valuable knowledge so that others can apply these learnings to their own leadership journeys. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to today's guest, Andrew Heath, who is the CEO of Spectris. Good morning, good afternoon, Andrew.
Yeah, good morning, David. Great to be connected with you again.
Yeah, so Andrew's based in the UK, so thank you for making time at the end of your day for joining this group today. So Andrew joined Spectris in 2019, September, and he brings a wide range of executive and leadership expertise with proven experience in technology-enabled businesses and a track record of delivering shareholder value. Prior to Spectris, he was the CEO of Imagination Technologies Group from 2016 to 2018. And before that, he was the CEO of Alent PLC. And prior to this, he had a 30-year career with Rolls-Royce, where he held a number of international and senior management roles, serving at the end as the president of energy from 2010 to 2015. On the education side of things, Andrew has a bachelor's BSc in engineering from Imperial College of London and an MBA from Loughborough University. Did I get that pretty close to accurate, Andrew?
Well, yeah, Loughborough, but yeah, I mean the Australians would call it Loughborough, but
yeah. So yeah, apologize for
it's an interesting spelling, yeah.
Yeah. So could you tell us briefly about yourself, and for those that have never met you in person or in a setting like this, what's a fun fact or a tidbit about yourself that people might not know about your background?
Oh well, yeah. Well, I think you covered my background really well, Dave. But I mean, I've had the pleasure of working and living around the world through my career, and just picking up on your pronunciation of Loughborough there. I mean, I think one of the things that's always certainly sort of amused me is the sort of the fact that the UK and the US are divided by a common language in many ways. And when we were living in the US, we lived in the US twice, and on one occasion we were living in Texas, and we'd only shortly arrived there. My son got invited to a school party. He was only he'd been about sixth grade or eighth grade, and so on a Sunday we thought, oh well, we looked in the guidebook. We thought we'd go to somewhere that nearby where the party was, to see some American culture. So there was this place called Waxahachie, south of Fort Worth.
Old Indian.
Yeah. No, you know it. Okay,
yes.
Great. So it's sort of got virtually every letter in the alphabet in the name. And so we dropped us off the party. We went to Waxahachie. We found Waxahachie was shut on a Sunday, other than Walmart. So we had like 2-3 hours to kill. So what we do, we go shopping. So we went around to Walmart and everything. So I was just thinking, how this place, with its history. So I get to the checkout, talking to the lady on the checkout, and I said, how do you pronounce this place? And she goes, son, it's real easy. It's Walmart. That's it. I thought, this is it. I'm gonna have fun in Texas, clearly divided by a common language. So
yeah.
But yes, it's sort of when it comes to sort of change, one of the first things we have to think about is actually, are we all speaking the same language, and we all 100%. Understand where we're coming from? So I thought I'd share that.
Walmart in Waxahachie, Texas. All right.
I don't recommend it on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we actually had the real reason I know that is we had a client in Waxahachie actually that made building products. So I remember hearing the word for the first time. I was like, is this a real city? Like, are you kidding me right now? Is a real city name? Yeah. Well, great. Well, I would love to hear your personal lean journey story. So I think I mean, in terms of your exposure to lean and continuous improvement and Kaizen, it wasn't at first at Spectris, if I'm not mistaken, right? It was in other roles. So maybe if you could just bring us on that journey of like, when were you first exposed to this? What was the situation? Kind of what was that progression? Kind of do the storytelling all the way up until the Spectris time of what that
Yeah.
journey was like. And then we'll probably spend a lot of time really talking about the transformation that you've led at Spectris, the results that's led to, the implementation of the Spectris business system, and all those great things. But I'm really interested in all the raw material experiences that you had along the way that
Yeah.
led to your recognition. Like in order to add value in Spectris, this was something we really needed to get pretty committed to and serious about. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
It does indeed. I'm not sure an hour won't be long enough, but so I'll just pull out maybe some sort of stories along that journey. So I guess it is, in many ways, it sort of started when it's sort of in my early stage of my career, some of those first sort of frontline sort of management jobs I was given, and I was had the privilege to be sort of working on the shop floor as working as a shift manager back in the sort of in my sort of mid-20s, early career. And then moved into through manufacturing, so sort of quite a strong operations background. And one of the things that really struck me as sort of quite a naive first sort of supervisor manager was actually the lack of standard work. It sort of walked into the job and it's like, well, here you go, get on with
Yeah.
it. And it seemed to be very much personality driven. And so there was no sort of playbook, there's no sort of rule book. And I found that sort of quite intriguing. I guess in some ways quite liberating, but at the same time it's sort of quite intriguing. It's like, well, how do you perpetuate what's going well versus, and equally, how do you identify what needs to be changed? And I also noticed as I moved jobs in my early career, the sort of often the people who followed you just like started again and did their own thing. And I think that seems sort of mightily odd. And then sort of I guess what so I was in my late 20s, and I was at Rolls-Royce at the time, as you said, and Rolls-Royce outsourced its IT to EDS at the time, and that was in sort of the first sort of wave, that initial wave of a lot of IT outsourcing. And EDS had recently acquired AT Kearney, the management consultants, and they came in and they looked at Rolls-Royce, which had sort of effectively gone bankrupt in the early 70s, the government had stepped in, so it was effectively a sort of a publicly owned entity. It hadn't had a huge amount of investment during that time frame through to the mid 80s, when it was then sort of reprivatized and IPO'd. And EDS identified there's a lot they could do on the system side, on the IT, but also in terms of just sort of process re-engineering. And they convinced the board to do a sort of big risk and reward sharing consulting exercise with AT Kearney, where the consultants were basically deployed at risk, and that they would then, that they would be remunerated on the basis of the benefits they could generate. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to lead one of those 6 initiatives, and I was asked to lead one of them. I think that was my first sort of real exposure to sort of big process re-engineering and change management. And I'd have to say, sort of 6 months into that program, I thought my career was over, in that we were doing everything wrong, really, in terms of it was very much sort of owned by the director of the business, top down, crammed down on the organization. We brought in over 200 consultants. We'd recruited over 400 people internally to sort of join these sort of change teams, and then we're trying to impose change on the organization.
Yeah.
And of course, the antibodies rose up. And it was a really tough period, and I'm thinking we did lots of things, including sort of offsites and trying to get sort of our sponsors and the key change agents, the key decision makers together, and we did it at an offsite hotel. And at the end of that, I think this was we had 2 days. We thought this was it. We're going to crack it. We'll get everyone aligned. At the end of that, we were further apart than when we started. And I think that was quite a pivotal moment in my sort of learning about the whole sort of change journey, and in particular around sort of strategy deployment. You just try and cram things down on organizations, on people. People typically don't like it. People like to have the ownership. They like to have the ability to express their own views and what's needed. And in the end, we turned into success, but we did it by completely inverting the model. So we then spent quite a lot of time working with the business in terms of, well, what is the strategy? What does the company need to achieve? What are the changes therefore we need to go after? How can we do that? And then use the resources to facilitate the business to go and drive that change. And that wasn't really a lean journey. It was much more sort of process re-engineering and IT led, in fairness. But I think in terms of one of the key learnings for me was it was really sort of thinking about how not to do change and how to do change. And then I think Rolls-Royce introduced Six Sigma, a really sort of statistical process control. Great set of problem-solving tools, but I think with hindsight, the way it was deployed, it was too much time was spent trying to train up green belts and black belts, and then the projects all had to be certified, and it just took it was quite a long process, quite drawn out. And then I got introduced to lean when I was running one of the services businesses, actually when I was out in Texas. And that absolutely sort of opened my eyes to a different way of driving change, because to me lean is all about the whole philosophy. It's a systems approach, and you look at the whole system very much with the customer, the process, and the people in mind, and think about actually how do we optimize this all round. And the tools are very simple to use, to teach. And the trick then is all about engaging the people. Mm-hmm. And I guess my sort of the core part of my sort of values and beliefs and leadership is all about trusting in people and believing in people and empowering people. And going back to my early career, on the shop floor, running teams on the shop floor, running operations. It really struck me. We had people who were athletes, who were running parents' associations at schools, doing all this stuff outside of work. But we weren't utilising their skills inside of work. Yeah. And so it really struck me about how do we listen particularly to our people, believe in them, and then act on their suggestions. So I think inherently that sort of the lean approach has really appealed to sort of some of my core values and beliefs about empowering people and how do you lead people effectively. So that's a bit of the history, and then I think so really from then, which would take me to the early 2000s in terms of that lean exposure. Really sort of then deployed it pretty much everywhere else that I've been subsequently, and then particularly coming into Spectris. The sort of as I joined Spectris, the Spectris exec team at the time were flirting with the idea of sort of a Spectris business system, deploying lean. There was one of the execs who was an ex-Danaher employee, who was very much, quite passionate about it and said, look, this is the Danaher business system, this is what they've been doing. And I go, absolutely, we should be doing that. What are we doing already? And we weren't doing that much. And so I sort of made it a sort of core plank of the strategy from when I joined, really, and said that what we coined the Spectris business system as our lean operating model. When we came out with the new strategy, sort of 6 months after I joined, we had set the Spectris business system sitting at the heart of that strategy, and we'd set ourselves some very tough objectives in terms of growth, in terms of margin expansion, in terms of cash conversion, and driving much better return on capital employed in the business. And we said the Spectris business system is there not only to deliver the financial metrics, but also to drive sort of a growth mindset and a customer focused mindset as well.
I mean, I think it's maybe spend a little bit of time on Spectris, the company, and kind of like how you're organized, the markets you serve, the products that you make, and things like that, because I think it's really important in the Spectris business system story about why there was a necessity to sort of unify this group of sort of completely different companies really across the portfolio around a common set of principles, tools, a culture, a way of working, that if you didn't do that, you'd have like, just probably oversimplifying this, but like a loose group of mercenary companies sort of doing their own thing, their own way. And then at the top, you're sort of like whatever results you get or what you get. And it's a function of how well or how not so well those presidents or those opco leaders lead their businesses. And is that congruent with a common sort of approach? So if you spend a little bit of time just on Spectris, the company, and how
Yeah,
you're organized and what you do and those kinds of things.
yeah. Yeah, at its heart, Spectris is a specialist premium precision measurement business. And when I joined, we were effectively sort of 14 independent operating companies, sort of loosely franchised under Spectris as a holding company. And I think if you look at the sort of the history leading up to when I joined in 2018, the business had only grown about 1% compound in the previous 6-8 years. Margins were coming off a peak of around about 18% in 2012.
In a high growth industry, one would argue too, right? So you're losing share to somebody.
Yeah. So margins had come off from 18% down to 15%. Some acquisitions have been made that have made the company more capital intensive. And as a consequence, sort of from an investor, from the streets perspective, it felt like the company lost its way a little bit. Whilst everyone felt it was a good business with some good assets, some good brands, some good market positions, good technology, which is all true. It was not delivering on its potential. So the strategy that we deployed when I came in was really to sort of simplify and refocus the group around premium precision measurement, return the business to being asset light, and keeping the sort of the core assets of the business, which we felt had the strongest growth opportunities, the strongest margin potential, but fundamentally the strongest market and technology and the strongest positions. So we went from so we had 14 companies. We effectively sold 8 during the last 5 years, bought about 9 other companies, which we've then tucked in or bolted onto those core assets that we have kept. And we've now sort of refocused the group into 2 divisions. One is around scientific instruments, and the other around sort of premium sort of test and measurement. So we have a Spectris Scientific and Spectris Dynamics as our two divisional structure. So we've been through a major sort of portfolio transition to optimize the assets within the group and to sort of really capitalize on the end market growth opportunities. And we've changed that over that time from say only growing sort of 1 to 2%, 15% operating margins to being the last 3 years we've grown double digits, and margins of at the end of last year up at 18.1%. So a lot of change, both from a portfolio, but also fundamentally, just far more efficient, far more productive. And what we've done in terms of our sort of the lean deployment, the Spectris Business System has been a key part of that story.
So I remember, maybe I don't know if you remember this, but you and I think your CFO and Joe, we met in a dark conference room in Denver airport.
Right.
Sort of kick off this idea of the Spectris Business System and what that could look like. And one thing that really stuck with me from that conversation that now makes sense hearing your origin story is how people-centric you were, and how I would not, maybe concern isn't the right word, but you're very vocal about that this change needed to be led from your team and owned by your team and bought into by your team, the 14 different business leaders and the supporting org structure for that, in order for this to be successful. And I'm going to steal your saying, from the crown down. A lot of times people in the lean community think that the only way this can work is from the crown down, therefore don't try. And I think your style is more to be a collaborative leader and help them see the benefit of these things so that they're leaning in and they're pulling versus you pushing, especially in the type of organization you are, which is, you're a holding company at the top, right? And the real value is added within these businesses. So if they aren't leaning in and screaming for this and doing it, it's never going to sustain. It's going to be Andrew's Spectris business system, not the operating company's Spectris business system, that unites us as a culture. So was that intentional, or was that, accidental? So
No, it's very no, so it's very intentional. I mean, and in part, in part that's part of the story in my journey personally. But also, because we were a sort of loosely federated amalgam of 14 operating companies, the Spectris business model was very much one of sort of decentralized, deployed accountability into the businesses. So therefore, running this as a completely central program would have been quite countercultural in reality as well. So given our operating model, it wouldn't have been appropriate. Now, having said that, we did create a small team at the centre. So sort of the rules, the tools, the training, the coaching, supporting execution, that has, again, proved to be effective in terms of being able to sort of provide the support to the businesses to allow them then to go and deploy it. And when they've got questions, or when they're stumbling a bit, or they need a bit of help, then there's a central team there that can help them. There has been a tension, certainly in the early days, between the central team and what the businesses are accountable for, and inevitably you also end up with sort of people have different experiences about what lean means for them. They've got people who work in different companies, and they've got different flavors of lean, and people have different sort of preferences and approaches towards what lean means. If you're not careful, you then get sort of well, my way is better than your way. Well, we're all trying to do lean. So right. Actually, let's create a common language that that we can all agree on, and we effectively standardized around sort of 8 core methods, which we then trained and gave people that sort of common approach. And really importantly, I think the common language, so that as the businesses started to use it and learn, they could talk to each other and share experiences, etc. And that was very helpful.
I oftentimes find that when a company is trying to implement a business system approach like you did at Spectris, that there's parts of the culture that need to be preserved because it's the secret sauce that sort of makes this company successful. And if you're not careful, you sort of can overlook some of that magic in the deployment of something like a Spectris business system. And then you have an old guard of people within the company that has sort of been responsible for driving a lot of the results and the culture and things like that, that start to see this as an attack on the company culture that they've helped build and establish. So I like to kind of think of it as like sometimes CEOs kind of go in and they go do a scorched earth sort of approach. It's like, don't tell me about everything you've done in the past because it's all broken, and we're going to do everything in a new way. And they don't stop to really assess what's good, what do we need to keep, what do we need to stop doing because it's not serving us, and then what are things that we should be doing, but maybe doing them in a different way because there's something there that we need to continue or get better at. So for you, like, what was the situation when you first arrived at Spectris, and how did you get your arms around all the current state of the culture within your business? And it's sort of a difficult challenge because not only do you have a culture at Spectris, you have a culture at 14 different businesses too. And I sort of remember, like, at Danaher, it's like, yes, we had this Danaher business system thing that united all of us, but then you could go to an operating company and find a completely different, unique culture in a lot of ways that was positive, but made better through the application of DBS. So what was that like in Spectris at the time? And has that been an ongoing challenge for you?
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, the sort of cultural journey that we've been on, I think, has been one of the key determinants of success, actually, both from a overall business performance, but certainly in terms of the deployment of the Spectris business system. And the reason I say that is that when as part of the sort of strategy work that I kicked off when I came in sort of back end of 2018. We redefined our sort of purpose as a group, and that was very much to harness the power of precision measurement to make the world cleaner, healthier, more productive. And that really resonated with a lot of staff. And then the other sort of key parts of that was also thinking about culturally what are our values? What's core to us as a business? What's the core in our DNA? And as I went round the business doing my induction in the early months, I think what really struck me was that the businesses actually were more similar than less. Actually, there was a lot more that sort of united us than divided us, for sure. Businesses all had good technologies, good people, good brands, but particularly a lot of pride and passion in their brands and what they were, in what the people feeling in the business. And there was also a lot of ambition, including the first budget that I was presented with, which was in a declining market. We were going to smash. They said in 2019 we're going to actually smash things, even though the world is slowing up. And so the businesses were never short of that ambition. And so what we said is, okay, so what do we look like on our best day? So we did a bit of work on the on values, and we had 5 at the time, which if you got enough people together over a few minutes, they could remember maybe between them what the 5 were. They weren't being particularly well lived at the time. So we said, what do we look like on our best day? And sort of 3 words emerged from all that, doing focus groups across all the businesses. And they synthesized down to 3 things, which was around integrity, accountability, and aspiration. And we turned those into something that was a bit more sort of meaningful, emotional, evocative, impactful, and also measurable, consequential. And so we turned those into be true, own it, and aim high. That piece of work and its deployment, and we ended up deploying it during 2020 during COVID. We were going to kick off at the start of 2020. COVID landed, and we said, actually, no, we're in the middle of a pandemic. The easy way let's not bring some change initiative during all this. There's enough going on. But we said, no, actually, in terms of values, that we really need to be talking about values and culture, even more so during a time like this when it's quite challenging for the business and people personally. And those values have really resonated right across the group. We always had a strong sort of culture of doing right, integrity. The business model was very much just sort of around, say, very deployed responsibility. So the own it really resonated, and that aspiration, that ambition, the aim high bit came through. So we've used that in our communication around lean and around the business system. Around, okay, let's be true. Let's do the right thing. Let's do it in the right way. Let's respect the individuals. Let's listen to our people. But let's really own it, as a team locally, and drive it locally. And let's aim high and continually improve every day. And I think that that piece of work we did around the culture and values has been really helpful in terms of reinforcing why lean as a philosophy really works. Because at the end of the day, it is about, to me, it's about 3 voices. It's the voice of the customer, it's the voice of the process, and the voice of the people. It's not about the voice of the manager. Typically, we need to listen to our customers. We need to listen to what the process is telling us about what's working, what's not working. And then equally, most important, really listen to our people who are closest to the action, and then act upon it. And I think by the 2 things running in parallel, they both heavily involve or very reliant on engaging people in terms of getting the results. So the shift culturally, the shift around the values, the shift around putting a lean operating model in, I think it was all very supportive of each other. And there's definitely been a key part of sort of creating a sort of high performance culture and business performance at the same time.
Yeah, I think if I were to say one of the reasons, there are many reasons for your success, but like from the outside in, looking in on why you guys have been successful deploying the Spectris business system, is the integrated nature by which you're using it to run the company. And oftentimes I find myself in conversations with CEOs, many of which who haven't had sort of the personal formative experiences that you have had, like early in your career and things like that. So they're new to this whole conversation. So they struggle to imagine or understand like how a business system fits in with the company that they're running. And they sometimes think of it as like it's this other extracurricular thing I have to do in addition to manage my investors, work with HR to create the values for the company, the establish what the business operating rhythm and the metrics are going to be. Like they think of all those things as like separate activities, and I have to like bring them back to it's like no, like the business system is who you are and how you do what you do, and it's not this extracurricular thing. It is the way you run your business.
Yeah.
And so the definition of lean expands almost by default because it does comprise behaviors, values, principles, tools, the way we work, the way we measure our company. So it's thought of at a higher level. And then once they get that, they're like, boom, I like now I have this thing that I can anchor to, that no matter what the external circumstances are, whether the markets are good, whether they're down, the thing that we'll always fall back on to weather the storm is through our commitment to our business system. And not only like committed to the businesses, but like making the business system better over time so that it is almost viewed as like the way we get those results that shareholders want and expect from us is by solving problems in our business using our business system. And that will always be the answer a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And while that's strong and while that creates sort of a constancy of purpose, it's also fragile at the same time because you're going to retire someday, and
Mhm.
and whoever replaces you, does the board understand how important it is for that continuity and that constancy of purpose for that next person that comes in after you to keep that alive and well and take it from where it is today to this new level? Not, we tried this SBS thing and now we need to do, fill in your flavor of the month. I don't, whatever you want to do it, because wherever I came from, this was better and this worked. And then they strip it all out. And then everybody in the company is going, wait a second, what happened? And I think you could go through all these books on these case studies of these great companies that went through this transformational journey. And then they're almost embarrassed that those companies are in a book, because if you look at those same companies today, they lost their way. And I think it all comes back to this lack of understanding around constancy of purpose. Like commit to a way of running your company and then continually improve upon that, but don't just pull it all out. So like what's your thoughts on that? I know you talk about that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, as you know, Damon, you or I could, spend the rest of the day and we could download all the tools, all the training materials off the internet. I
Yeah.
mean, none of this is rocket science. It is, to my mind, it's about thinking about the sort of lean as a philosophy and as part of your management system, and so you have to, it has to be deployed out with the businesses and out where the action happens. And if you were to walk around Spectris today, we use standard daily management boards. We have what we call SQDIP. So we have we measure safety as the first sort of set of measurements, KPIs, quality, on-time delivery, performance. We measure inventory. And then we measure productivity, and there are 5 standards, and you'll see SQDIP boards anywhere you go in Spectris. But if you walk up to them, have a look at them closely. What is actually the measures that we actually use underneath it, the KPIs. Quite often you'll see quite a bit of difference. You'll see different ways that the different teams have decided this is right for us to actually run our operations. You'll see, the same process in terms of tiered accountability and daily management. But what you will see is, very much, hopefully strong local, ownership by the operators, and they will have tailored and tweaked their boards to make it work for them in the situations that they find themselves in. And sort of amusing story. I was at one of our sites the other month, and I was talking to one of the teams, doing a bit of coaching around the boards, and I just saying, well, okay, so how's this evolved? And they're telling me this, and so this is I think our 3rd or 4th iteration. And I said, okay, so are you still getting help in terms of defining how you run the board? And they go, oh, we don't want any help. This is our board. This really works for us. Don't touch it. I thought, great, this is real ownership, because they actually see real value in having that sort of daily management board, the tiered accountability meetings, knowing what they're responsible for, what they can fix, what they need to escalate, who they escalate to, how they get the response. And it is getting that, it's getting this whole system in place. And that is, to in my experience, is the nub of the challenge. It is about, it's about thinking about lean as a philosophy and as a management system, not just as a set of tools. And I've been, I've done a number of benchmark visits and seen other businesses where, it has been pushed down and everybody has the same measures, the same boards, they audit the boards, how they use, you have to conform to standards. Everybody gets sort of, sheep dipped through training.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're not getting any of the benefits because it's felt like this is being done to me and I've just got to use it as a reporting tool rather than actually helps me do my job better and run my operation day to day.
Yeah, you almost see this disconnect in priorities from my business presently struggles with this, and this, and then corporate's being asking me to do all these other things which aren't helping me to run or improve my business that I struggle with in these present areas. And I think successful business systems bring those two things together, and it's like you pull on the tools you need to achieve your strategy within this business or to improve your operations that you presently struggle with. And there may be aspects or parts of the business system that don't apply to you for a long period of time until you get those things figured out. And I think of it like almost being a personal trainer, and it's like I get your health to a certain level, and once you understand how to do those things from an exercise point of view, I don't need to teach you how to keep doing those things. We're gonna work on something new to build new muscle in your organization, and then teach you a new competency till I can install that, and then we move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing after that. So you talked about the SQDIP boards. So can you talk a little bit about any challenges you experienced in trying to bring SBS to the non-traditional areas of the business? So outside the four walls of the factory, I think everybody's sort of like, most people would agree lean applies in a factory. Like there aren't a whole lot of people that disagree with that anymore. But when you move over to areas of the business like sales and marketing and finance and customer service, how do you bring that same level of passion, rigor that you talked about with this operations team to the sales leaders, to the marketing leaders of the business, without overwhelming them with all the jargon and lean terminology, if you will, and keeping them focused on what they're there to do, whichever their function is there to provide for the business?
Yeah. So in fairness and in Spectris, I mean, we are really at that sort of point of now expanding impact beyond the operations. We really wanted to sort of get SBS established within within the factories on the shop floor. Now we haven't stopped people from adopting it, and we've provided leadership training. So there are plenty of examples where people have picked up the tools. I mean, the most recent one I can think of is last week. We have a quarterly awards where we sort of recognize the best Kaizen, and we sort of recognize role models around the business. And one of the role models that from this quarter was Rachel Mosley, running our Malvern Panacle business, who runs sort of sustaining engineering. So basically, she runs the engineering team to look after the older products and make sure that we're managing obsolescence and upgrades and software changes, etc., all the things you have to do, which isn't the most, for some engineers, isn't always the most glamorous job. They want to be working on the forefront of innovation and things. But maintaining our current products we supply to customers is really important. And Rachel's deployed a lot of the sort of standard daily management work, problem solving in particular, as to how we go and fix some of the issues in the backlog of some of the sort of technical challenges that we have, and done a great job in picking those tools up. And talking to her, she's like, find it really useful to sort of work with the team, engage the team through this. Gets a little focused and excited about it, but she also find it really useful in my personal life as well, in terms of how I run my own personal life. So it's we're at that point of now starting to expand into some of those other areas. And the reason we've one of the big reasons we've held off is that we are in the process of deploying a new ERP system across the group. So we are going on basically standardizing on SAP S/4HANA in the cloud. And as part of that, we are standardizing a lot of our processes on SAP processes. And so rather than trying to customize SAP, we're basically saying, the system works. We're not that complicated a business. But we've obviously developed over many decades. Now we need to actually sort of change some of our processes to the SAP one, so we can go and deploy it to standard and make the deployment a lot easier and less risky. So that's really been our primary focus as we deploy SAP across the group over the next 18 months. We just done the first deployment that started at the beginning of April. We will effectively then, once we've got that in stabilized, we will then deploy the sort of market to order, look through the sales process and say, right, okay, now against these standard processes, now then how can we simplify and optimize that within the system as well, and how do we work this better? So that's I think logically we felt there was no point trying to do wholesale process change, and when we're actually going to have to effectively do that anyway. So that's sort of the next phase of our sort of lean deployment at the SBS program.
Yeah.
But having said that, we've run Kaizen events on putting the annual report together, for instance. With all the people involved, how can we just simplify the process of putting the annual report together? How do we take out waste, duplication, lead time? How do we simplify it, take cost out of that? We've got a Kaizen event going on looking at export controls at the moment. In terms of how can we get a slicker process in place for sort of getting export control approvals, given some of the increased challenges around the world of getting export licenses and what have you. So people are naturally starting to pick those pick the tools up and the training up and going deploying it, particularly on problem solving or Kaizen related. How can we improve improve in certain areas?
Yeah, I think to be an investor commercial for you, it's a pretty exciting future ahead if you think about the results you've been able to unlock primarily through operations application of SBS, and then when you start to apply that into other areas of the business and you start to work on other aspects of the P&L, the growth story it gets bolstered by that, the margin story gets bolstered by that. So it's a pretty compelling future ahead if you apply it the same way to some of the other areas of the business. And as I think about a business system, a truly integrated business system should affect all aspects of the P&L. There's a set of tools around driving organic growth. There's a set of tools around driving inorganic growth. There's a set of tools around improving working capital. There's a set of tools around expanding margin, so on and so forth. And it's when you can unlock that completely and all the thousands of employees across the company recognize which piece of that they own, then they grab onto those tools to affect those outcomes. And then it's just this big snowball effect that the company's spinning off all this cash. Question for you. So have you guys made any acquisitions in the time period, at least notable sizable acquisitions in the time period in which you've started SBS? Has there been any acquisitions made?
Yeah, have, yes. Yeah, we've made 8, 9 fairly reasonable size acquisitions.
How have you thought through, intentionally, how do we bring those new companies in to the culture of SBS? Because this was always the discussion in Danaher was the bigger we got, the bigger the expectations are for growth. Then inorganic was a big piece of that. But then when you're buying a 10,000 person company and you're putting it into a 60,000 person company, that company brings with it a culture of its own. And how do you all the earlier conversations, not destroy the business, not destroy the culture, get them in a unified way of working, unlock the value that the diligence uncovered, and make them part, because quite frankly most acquisitions just aren't successful. If you kind of look at the research, people fail to integrate these businesses well. So how have you guys thought through a process-based approach to integrating companies within Spectris, primarily around SBS?
Yeah, we've developed our own sort of PMI playbook. And that has expectations around what you do on day one, week one, month one, quarter one, etc.
Sounds like
Um,
standard work.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, because otherwise you just keep relearning the same lessons. And there are certain things that are absolutely fundamental that you need to get in, right up front, particularly around things like cybersecurity. Is one of it's one of our priorities, values, culture. And then also, then you've got the integration onto the finance systems, the HR systems, and the like. And then SBS is part of that PMI playbook. I mean, we don't start it on day one. I mean, you could argue some of the values and culture, the culture engagement side of it is the forerunner to that. But it's definitely sequenced within the playbook. And again, we look. Sometimes it's quite a heavy integration. Sometimes it's a much lighter touch, and you have to sort of deploy what's appropriate. But I think from an SBS perspective, it's really the same, which is, okay, so how are we going to, either depending on how much that business that you've acquired understands it, how much training have you got to do, how much facilitation, how much support do they need? But I mean, we bought a business in California, 2.5 years ago. And have started to deploy quite a lot of the SBS tools early on, particularly things like just basic things like 5S and safety, and fairly quickly on that business really sort of could see the benefit of actually joining Spectris, being part of us as a group, and actually we can help professionalize what they're doing and accelerate their growth. So that they actually saw it as quite as a real positive as being part of the group, because all of a sudden we could bring in a different way of thinking about things, different way of working. There's always obviously an improvement.
Oh, that's great. Are you ready for some questions from the audience?
Of course, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, so first question here. How do you proactively manage and lead the cultural change required to integrate all these disparate businesses into one system?
So it was a great question.
Getting the easy ones out of the way.
Yeah. So I think for me, I mean, I knew this was the right thing to do when I came into Spectris. And as I said, I pinned my colours to the mast pretty early on. And in a very early sort of investor presentation, I said that we effectively lean, and the Spectris business system is going to be a core part of the of our change journey and our strategy. I think the reality, was from an investor perspective that, that was, interesting, but, okay, a lot of companies talk about this, and they were more interested to know, well, wasn't anything going on before, what was going on before you came here, what state are you at, rather than, how is it really going to change the business? But I felt it was really important to, make that commitment publicly, as much as anything, to hold myself to account.
Yeah, no turning back. It's in writing now.
Sort of, effectively burn the boat, so you can't return, because it is a journey. And I think this is one thing I've really learned about sort of lean and change programs like this, is you have to recognize it's a journey. Having done it before, I can absolutely see, in any of our operations, facilities, companies, what a difference it could make. But it's no good me knowing that. You've got to get, the hundreds of people in that business knowing it as well. So it was very much sort of, put it at the heart of the strategy, sort of align some of the values and culture I've spoken about. We put a lot of focus on engagement. We measure employee engagement and how do we drive engagement, and clearly lean's a big part of that. And I think, and it's then just being persistent. We've set up a number of sort of structural things in the company as well. So I have, I chair an executive subcommittee, so a subcommittee of my exec team. So with the divisional heads, plus Judith, who's leads corporate development, but also she's responsible for SBS. She's part of that. And then we get the other sort of operating company heads involved. And then Kimberly, who's part of our central SBS team, she participates and sort of effectively puts the agenda together and runs that meeting. And I think over time we've flipped it from sort of us talking to ourselves to Kimberly now telling us, this is what I think we need to do. These are the options. Here's the recommendation. And very much more relying on Kimberly and her central team And what she does is she runs a sort of a working group from across the business. So she has all the SBS leads from the businesses and some of the sort of pivotal business leads working in a working group that she then runs, who then advises us as an exec, what's the right thing we need to do, how fast we should go, where we need to push, where we need to correct. So I think we've flipped it from myself telling the exec we're going to do this, the exec then sort of trying to work out and brainstorm how we're going to do it, to now the organisation leading it and telling us what we need to do to help them to
so the themes are bubbling up to the top.
Right.
So you flip the pyramid essentially.
Yeah. And I think that sort of that cultural journey has been essential. But a big shout out to Kimberly and her central team. I mean, they've been really instrumental in sort of sometimes holding our feet to the fire. Instrumental in helping me sort of wrestle with some of the challenges about where we need to push, where I shouldn't push, where I need to intervene, where I shouldn't intervene. And in the business of my day, also just keep bringing it back to the forefront of my attention to say, this is what we're doing, this is where it's going well, this is maybe what we need to go and think about. So we have thought about how we sort of put a structure around this to sort of support the implementation and the change journey as well.
So we have a couple questions sort of around the same theme, and they don't get any easier, Andrew. So this is all about resistance to SBS. So what, if any, resistance did you face around implementing SBS? And related to that, did you ever find yourself in a position where a leadership change had to be made because of a refusal to adopt SBS as their way of working?
So yeah, I mean, as I said, it's a journey, and I think you have to recognise it's a journey. And so whilst I say you can download all the tools today, it's all about winning the hearts and minds. And I mean, if it was sort of part of the resistance was that sort of lean had been tried in some parts of the business, and whilst there being some initial enthusiasm, in some cases that then didn't hadn't been followed through, it not have been maintained, the momentum had slowed. Which then led to sort of frustration, and we weren't getting the results. Then of course you then need to sort of do almost a reboot, and then that gets progressively hard. Well, we tried this before and didn't work, and then you end up with that cynicism and skepticism that you have to overcome. So I think it's sort of there are times where you just have to confront that if it's happened, and again be persistent. I think there's other reflections that times we've had sort of slightly different flavors of what lean's about and different priorities. Certainly as an exec team in the early days, it's like have we? Yes, it's the right thing to do, but have we got the time? We've got other priorities. We've been pushed to do this. We've been pushed to do that. I really can't afford to let my people go off on the training, or I can't afford to do these kinds of events, or so I think time is the most precious thing we have, and it's one of the things you've then got to really prioritize again, to sort of for people to commit that time to sort of making to allow progress to happen. But maybe they were the biggest ones, really. I mean, it's as chief executive, it's one of the privileges that you do have, in that you can be just quite belligerent at times, and you can be unreasonable. And sometimes you just have to be unreasonable to say, no, this is the right thing to do. I hear everything you say, but we're doing this, and we've got to, we've got to make this a priority. And in terms of the second part of the question, in terms of have we had to make some changes? Yes, we've had to make some changes. I think ultimately we try and train and coach and help people to understand and give them the opportunity. But ultimately, if people really, can't embrace this as a culture and a philosophy, a way of working and leading, then ultimately, they're not the best fit for us as a business and the culture that we want to have.
Yeah.
As one of we did a sort of end of year video on the SBS journey last year, and one of the site managers kicks it off by saying, management don't always have the best ideas. It's, and it's that, he's getting that cultural journey in place, such that actually, we do invert, as you say, your terms, invert the triangle, invert the pyramid, and really listen to the people at the sharp end and take on board their ideas.
Yeah, that's great. So in the spirit of SBS, what does your leader standard work look like as the CEO? Like, how do you bring SBS to life daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? Like, what are the touch points as you think about your calendar and you're organizing all the things that you have to do and all the stakeholders you have to satisfy? How do you bring SBS to life and ensure that it's sustaining?
Yeah, so one part of it's just it's the sort of the structure and system we put in place in terms of review. So we look
like business operating review for each business.
So in terms of that that operating rhythm on a quarterly basis, we look at SBS progress, we look at the benefits achievement, look at the Kaizen funnel, and then when we come to sort of forecast reviews through the year and budget reviews. And equally, the strategy process annually, SBS is part of that standard agenda, and is absolutely included. And then we have, a execs subcommittee, and then the sort of working group that Kimberly chairs and runs to make sure that all happens. And then really, as I go, on my visits around sites around the world, a key part is is going to Gemba, is walking the floor, doing safety walks, going to the boards. I try and join the Gemba, the meetings in the morning, at the start of the shift. So join in that sort of daily management process, and just participate, listen, and then be there very much to support and encourage and celebrate. That's been sort of very much sort of part of my sort of leader standard work around this.
Yeah, what I like about what you just said there is many of those business processes you just outlined exist at like every company, right? So it's not like you created new business, this new thing called a business review, or this new thing called strategy, or this new thing called what you did is you integrated SBS into how you execute those things so that they're not viewed as separate activities, but more as the way we enable our strategy, the way we enable our business results. And that would be great advice I would give to any CEO who's starting this lean journey as well, is don't think about it as separate things, merge it into the calendar that you already have today, which and even I would say most CEOs are probably going out to their sites and meeting with leadership. So it's like, well, how do you make the agenda of that meeting not be like a PowerPoint presentation where everybody's presenting to you and telling you all this great news? So much of it is getting beneath sort of the filtering that happens naturally in an organization, especially with somebody at your level, to get into the details of what's really going on in the business, right? No matter where you are, whether it's the shop floor or in the commercial processes and things like that.
Yeah, we did a sort of our last board strategy day. We did it at one of our sites, and so we had the board on the on the shop floor at 8 o'clock in the morning, doing the Gemba walk with that sort of the daily management meetings, and they just listened and then had the opportunity to ask questions and things, but they just watched the process in front of them. So again, very much part of it was education for the board in terms of how far we've come and how it really runs and operates, but equally, obviously, as a sign of support and their commitment to the process as well.
Any advice you would give to a CEO who maybe finds themselves in a similar position that you were when you first joined Spectris? Like either they have to reboot what was been done in the before, because maybe there was a bad experience with lean, or they're just getting started. What advice would you give that individual who's contemplating whether or not a business system approach could drive value in their company?
Yeah, so I'd say bite the bullet. This stuff works. Publicly commit. Your support. Friendly to sort of make sure it gives you the necessary resolve to follow through. But equally recognize it's a journey, and if you've been on a journey or two around lean yourself before, then you'll understand that if you haven't, then get someone alongside you who has, and who can help coach you and guide you and steer you as to what's the right thing to do, and give you the right tips and techniques to just to help sort of sustain that journey as well.
Yeah. It really takes an open mind and a willingness to try, and that's really, to me, is humility, is the quality that you're looking for, and you possess a lot of it. So thank you for your time today. The hour went really fast. I told you it would go fast. I feel like we could do this for another 4 hours. I know you got to get back to running Spectris. So thank you so much for your time today, Andrew. Before we bid farewell to Andrew, I want to encourage everyone to take a moment to reflect on the insights that he gave us today and the practical advice that he shared with us, and how you can apply these lessons in your own organizations and accelerate your own lean journey, or just get your lean journey started. If you have any further questions or would like to explore the possibilities of initiating or enhancing your lean transformation, don't hesitate to reach out to us at Lean Focus. That's what we're here to do, to support you at every step of the way. And again, thank you, Andrew, for sharing your experiences, your lessons learned with us, and grateful for your contributions today. And we hope to see all of you next month at a soon-to-be-announced new leader that will be joining us next month. And we're going to be announcing season 2 of Lean Catalyst, which we have a whole nother lineup of CEOs that will join us each month, continuing this journey. So thanks all for your time. And thank you again, Andrew. Take care.
Damon, it's been great to reconnect. Thanks. Bye.
Bye now.